Runaway brides of Reddit, what's your story? What was the final straw? How last second did you leave? My friend met a guy and within a week they were engaged. He was in the military and ghosted her about a month after proposing. 6 months later, he turns up and starts working at the same place as her and acted like he didn't even know her. Does that count? Lol. I was 17 at the time and still in high school. Met an alleged army guy, pre-full swing internet, so no way to really check, and we hit it off. I was young and fell in love with guys really fast, so when he proposed, I was ecstatic. The red flags were there. He asked my parent for permission. He proposed loudly at a pizza shop, which socially would have been too awkward to say no anyway. He didn't have his own place. I never met his family. I never saw any evidence of being in the military. Cue a few weeks later. We had a fight because he called out his sister's name during sex. He then told me that everything would be fine because he was going to take me to Kentucky to live on an army base. He also told me he wanted me to be barefoot and pregnant most of the time. We were going to get married and leave the day after I graduated high school. I did some real soul searching. I became withdrawn and quiet. I was visiting my Nana one day and she asked me, "Are you in love with him or in love with the idea of a wedding?" And just like that, the bubble burst. I cried and broke it off with him. 2 weeks before I graduated. Apparently, he had already booked a justice of the peace. But he got married anyway 3 weeks later. With the same ring he gave me. Poor girl. I wish I knew her so I could warn her. Had a friend that didn't know she was the bride until she was halfway down the aisle. Her parents had arranged a marriage for her, common in her culture, and had told her that the family had all been invited to a cousin's wedding. My friend was told everyone was going to be wearing white for whatever reason. I don't remember. They arrived at the church just before the bride was scheduled to walk down the aisle. My friend, thinking they're late, wanted to slip in and stay in the back. Her father, however, takes her arm and they start walking up the aisle. It isn't until they're halfway up that she stops and realizes everyone is looking at her and smiling and crying tears of joy. She turned to one of her aunts in the pew next to her and asked them who was getting married. The whole church went silent, and then the aunt looked at my friend's father and said, "You can't be serious. You planned a wedding for your daughter and just expected her to go along with it? Have the two of them even met? Did you seriously think this would work?" The whole room was them chattering about them, and the father just cleared his throat and told his daughter to keep walking. Luckily, the aunt grabbed my friend first and pulled her into the pew, pushed her past the row of people, and they both ran out of the church. Her parents disowned her after that, and she moved in with that aunt. Edit. They are an Indian family in the U.S. Her parents are very traditional, and she expressed that she didn't want to get married and wanted to focus on her career. A woman I briefly dated was a runaway bride. Her ex never hit her but constantly belittled her and was basically emotionally abusive. Your standard kit. Telling her she was lucky he wanted her, that she could never find anyone better, that she was ugly but he dealt with it, etc. 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 She was a smart kid, was a medic in the military, saving dozens of lives in Pakistan, but emotionally manipulative people can get anyone if given enough time, and he got her. On her wedding day, her dad, who wasn't usually in the picture, having divorced when she was a teen, was having a conversation with her in the ready room and got concerned when she started repeating a lot of the things her fiancé was saying to her. She said that she was mid-sentence when he stood up and said, "Let's go to Dairy Queen," out of the blue. When she was little, they often went to DQ and talked over ice creams. She took a second, agreed, and they left to go to DQ. But he drove 3 towns over and they sat and talked over ice cream for hours, while her phone rang the battery dead in the car. She said she felt like a huge weight was lifted and felt bad that her friends and family were waiting for her, but they would all understand later. He eventually went back to the church and told the bridal party it wasn't happening and got his buddies to come and move all her stuff out the next day. She said that while her dad wasn't the best father in her teens, he was the best dad anyone could ask for that day. We dated for a couple weeks before we figured out we weren't a good match. We parted amicably, but I haven't talked to her since. Not me, and I'm not sure it counts as runaway, but my sister broke up with her fiancé 4 months before their wedding, which was already planned and paid for. I'll be honest, I don't know the full story. Even now, 18 months later, she still hasn't fully opened up to us about it, but I never really liked the guy. He was nice enough, but he absolutely could not handle his drink. He could never have a little drink. No, he had to drink the whole bar every time, then would come home and puke up over the entire house. He then had the audacity to complain whenever my sister would go out with her friends just for a couple of drinks, to the point where he eventually just stopped letting her go out altogether. His family was an absolute mess as well. His mom and stepdad were pretty cool, but they moved to Canada to pursue their dreams, leaving my sister and her fiancé in the hands of aunts and uncles who did not approve of her at all. His little brother was on-off with his teenage girlfriend. He eventually knocked up, and who was always trying to one-up my sister too. Eventually, as far as she's told us, she just felt trapped by the guy. She was prohibited from hanging out with her friends and was forced to go to family events with people who despised her. He made her distance herself from us, which I think was painful for her, as she essentially missed quality time with her new nephews at the time. He basically controlled every aspect of her life. Anyway, she unceremoniously dumped him on New Year's Eve and canceled the wedding then and there. I don't think she even saw him again after that. She was always out when he came to collect his stuff. Obviously, his family weren't too happy about it and harassed her for months. She became depressed and needed medication, but it was my family that had to foot the wedding bill anyway. They were just glad to have their daughter back. My boyfriend at the time had a female friend who, the night before her wedding, finally spilled to several friends, including him, that her fiancé had been emotionally and physically abusing her, and she wasn't sure she should get married. We'd all noticed her being distanced from us, but she'd deny every time that something was wrong. The next day, her family mobilized to get the word out to all her guests, and a bunch of her friends essentially forced themselves into the guy's house to get all her things back. My boyfriend was a cop, so had a duty to press charges or something on the guy. I was never clear on this part. The woman was pissed off at him for a while, but now a few years later is seeing someone great who I've actually known forever and is quite a bit happier now. Plus, she knows her friends and family have her back and can get shit done. One of the people I know is what I can call a serial fiancé. She dates guys right until they propose to her, then she says yes, starts looking for venues, dresses, etc. And then she calls off the wedding and breaks up with the guy, saying I didn't want to marry him anyway. He's insert reason here. The last time this happened, she had an AMA about her wedding on Instagram, but 2 months before the supposed date of the wedding, all her photos, AMA answers, and mentions of engagement were gone. Maybe she's getting a kick out of it. I don't know. Runaway child bride. Anyway, when I was about 12 years old, smartphones became a thing. I started talking to a man online. He promised to take me away from my family. We talked every single day and late into the night. We loved each other about as much as a 12-year-old could live a 40-year-old man. He told me he'd make me a mother of many kids and planned to get me pregnant. One day, he drove down from Tennessee to pick me up. He was outside my house waiting for me. I put on my favorite white dress and went out to meet him. Then I froze. My mom had just had yet another baby. I started thinking about all that, if miss out on. Them growing up. Finishing high school. I went back inside and never saw him again. Not me, but a friend. He was dating a girl he met in university. They had been dating for 3 or 4 years, seemed like a solid relationship. A lot in common. Religion, family values, education goals. A week before their wedding, she goes out on a date with another guy. How did my friend know? She came home and told him she was going out on a date with a guy from her work. She came home late, somewhat drunk, and tries to climb into bed. My friend interrupts her, asking what she's doing. She replies, she's tired and wants to go to sleep. He kicks her out of the bed and tells her they're done. Long story short, it was messy. Cancelled wedding plans, awkward explanations to everyone. Poor guy had PTSD for a year from the situation. Heard a story from my mom about a friend of hers who planned on getting married. He was a great guy, very loving and responsible, etc., but his one flaw was his terribly bad temper. Their quarrels were always so bad that she would come crying to my mom about how he yelled at her. My mom advised her friend to leave before it's too late, but the friend genuinely thought he would change. The day before the wedding, he threw a tantrum so bad that he yeeted a whole table past her head. She nearly died. She canceled the wedding and never talked to him again. My GF's friend got married to a royal fucking douche recently. He called her fat on their first date, forced her to sell the modest house she already owned to buy him a massive fucking monster, forces her to be distant from her friends, and we suspect he hits her, among many other things I'm not privy to. At the wedding, he put together a slideshow which was dominated by pictures of him and his friends with a few of him and his wife. He spent 80% of his speech talking about how grateful he is for his friends. We were all rooting for her to be a runaway bride. Alas, she went through with it and got understandably drunk. He berated her for being drunk and told her she is an embarrassment, despite being quite inebriated himself. Please, people, if you're in a bad situation, seek help or let your friends help you. Not me, but my mom. My father left us when I was 1, so she was single most of her life until 10 years later. She found a great guy that we all loved and wished him in the family. He and my mom dated for years, maybe 6, and then he proposed her. She said yes, and I remember them planning their wedding. She even got a nice wedding dress, but one day, ONEDAY before the wedding, she called him and told him that she couldn't marry him. He is a great guy, still in contact with him, but he is one of those guys that doesn't have a passion, nor has a goal in life, and to be honest, he is in a very bad position right now. So for much love my mom had for him, I think she saw a bleak future at his side and decided to remain friends. A little bitch on my mom to say it till the last day, but we're humans after all, I guess. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, subscribe this channel and watch our next videos. Bye.